Hi everyone, and welcome to our first video cast of the consciousness unit. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about consciousness in general, so what it means to be conscious about something, and then we're going to focus on one of the main categories of consciousness, which is sleep. So, a little bit about consciousness. Consciousness is what's called a continuum. A continuum is basically like it can go from one end to the other. So it's not really like you're either conscious or unconscious. There's lots of variations of consciousness. Okay, so being conscious is your awareness of yourself and your environment. So we've all had this where sometimes you're much more aware of what's going on than others. An example might be when you're driving on the highway and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, was I driving? Like you don't even remember what you were passing or driving, but you somehow stayed in the lane and didn't hit anyone, right? So that's a level of consciousness. You weren't fully aware of what was going on, but you were obviously not unconscious. So some of the major types of consciousness, right? So we have daydreaming, and daydreaming is close to awake. You kind of hear what's going on around you, but you're really focusing on it inside your head, right? We have meditating, right? So meditating is a completely different stage of awareness than being fully awake is, right? You're almost in a different, you're like in a different stage or different phase of your life. It's like you're kind of outside of yourself. Right? Drug-induced hallucinations or any kind of drug-induced state is a type of consciousness, right? Drugs might make you more or less aware of your surroundings. And of course, we have sleep, right? And sleep is all of our favorite stages of consciousness. Everyone loves to sleep. Everyone loves naps. And as teenagers, you definitely don't get enough of it. So, consciousness, right? The thing about consciousness is that it's actually pretty selective. So you can actually choose to pay attention to some things and not others, right? This is called the cocktail party phenomenon. You've all had this where you're watching TV, right? And you're paying attention to whatever you're watching, right? You're watching The Bachelorette, okay? Maybe that's just me, but whatever. And all of a sudden, my roommate or your parents will say something and then you're like, huh? But you heard them, but you don't exactly know what they said, right? So this is called the cocktail party phenomenon or selective attention. And this is the idea that you can choose to focus your awareness on some things and not another, but you can't have your awareness focused on two things at the same time. You can only give your attention to one thing at a time. That's why multitasking is not possible. I know you think that it is. You can task and do these things at once, but you can't. You just can't. Another cool thing with consciousness is that you can actually be so focused on one thing that you can have something called change blindness. Where that is like literally someone makes a change to something and you're totally blind to the change because your attention is so focused on something and you kind of like don't even pay attention to what's happening. So this is an example of this, right? This guy is in on the experiment. He's asking this guy for directions. Then these two guys come in between them and they actually switch. See the guy in this color right here? He actually switches with that guy. And this guy getting directions doesn't even notice that this guy and this guy are completely different because their attention was focused on the directions and not on the person they were talking to. And this is another example of this. We're going to talk about this in class. Okay, so biological clocks, right? You have a biological clock. It's a circadian rhythm, right? It's a natural clock. It actually goes along with the Earth's rotations. It's about every 24 hours your body cycles through different biological processes, right? So here's kind of, a chart of all the different things. You don't have to copy this chart down, but if you see here, like your lowest sensitivity to pain is 4 p.m., peak sensitivity 4 a.m., so don't get a tattoo at 4 a.m., right? Peak degrees of sleepiness, 3 a.m. and 3 p.m., but sometimes around 4th hour, okay? So your body's biological processes go in a clock. And this clock is controlled by something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, okay? This is actually located in the hypothalamus, okay? And it helps regulate certain circadian rhythms, okay? So another thing is melatonin, okay? Melatonin is, it's a pineal gland hormone, okay? And basically what it does is the melatonin produces sleepiness. So when you turn on the lights in the morning, your melatonin shuts off, okay? And that's why you become less sleepy. At nighttime, you turn the lights off, you close the lights, right? You turn the lights off and your melatonin increases. So if you look at this here, right, first thing in the morning, lots of melatonin. Shortly after you see the light, less. During the middle of the day, less and less, right? So the suprachiasmatic nucleus directs the pineal gland, and the pineal gland releases melatonin. Melatonin is the chemical that makes you sleepy. Okay, if we didn't have, our lifestyle where you like wake up and it's a 24-hour clock, your body would actually run on something about 25 hours. It's kind of interesting, okay? A little bit of why we care about biological clocks is because of things like jet lag and the graveyard shift. So for example of it, if your biological clock is off, you feel tired physically and mentally. It can cause depression. It can cause irritable sleep. And the deal is that our bodies were made to work on a natural biological clock. And so the graveyard shift or working the night shift really kind of throws that off. And actually I find that the majority of accidents that have happened on the job happen during the graveyard shift because humans are just not meant to be awake at that time. Okay, so we started measuring sleep research in about the 1920s. We came up with an EEG. It's electroencephalogram, right? And what an EEG does is it measures brain activity, right? It measures what type of activity is going on in your brain while you're sleeping. And because of this, we were able to figure out that there's two basic types of sleep: REM, rapid eye movement, and this is active sleep or paradoxical sleep. And we'll talk about this in a second because you have a lot of brain and body activity going on, and your eyes move back and forth like this. Non-REM or NREM, right, is a quiet sleep, okay, and it actually has 4 stages. So in NREM, you have stage 0, beta, before you sleep, right? Stage 1 is alpha. These are the names of the types of waves that you see on an EEG. So the EEG has certain waves. It goes like this, din, 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 din. And the waves represent the stage. So in stage 1, you're in alpha. This is where you have hypnagogic hallucinations. So like you feel like you're falling, right? And you kind of wake up, okay? It's also where you might have what's called a witch pressing. So it's like this dark figure coming towards you. And it only lasts a couple of seconds, right? Or minutes. It doesn't last very long. Stage 2 is theta, and this is where you have sleep spindles and K complexes. Sleep spindles and K complexes are just types of waves that you see on the EEG, okay? This is where sleep talking is most likely to occur, is in stage 2. Stage 3, you have delta, right? And delta waves are the deepest waves. Stage 3 doesn't really last very long. It's kind of a transitional stage. And then you have stage 4. Stage 4 is the deepest sleep that you are in, okay? This is delta waves again. So the waves go beta, alpha, theta, delta, okay? And delta, deep sleep, stage 4. This is where people sleepwalk. This is where people do bedwetting. This is where little kids and even adults can have night terrors. And night terrors and nightmares are not the same thing because night terrors, right, happen without a story. There is no like image in your mind. It's just you wake up in extreme fear. Whereas a nightmare, you wake up and there's a storyline, okay? So these are the stages of non-REM sleep, okay? The last stage is your stage of REM sleep. REM sleep is when your brain waves are very, very active, and it's called paradoxical sleep because your heart rate, blood pressure, breathing all increase, okay? Sexual arousal, everything happens. Your body is like, whoa, right? But you're also paralyzed, okay? So your brainstem actually blocks those messages from your motor cortex so that you cannot move your arms and legs, right? And this is, of course, because in REM sleep is where you dream the most, and you don't want to act out your dreams because literally you could do something real crazy, all right? So your heart rate, your blood pressure, your brain is active, you're sexually aroused, all this thing is going on, but you're completely paralyzed. So this is why it's called a paradox, because there are two things that don't really go together, right? Being active and paralyzed. This is where the majority of dreaming and nightmares takes place. It's not the only place you can dream in non-REM, but this is the majority of them, right? And as the night goes on, your REM sleep gets longer and longer. So you dream the most closest to when you wake up. Okay, now we actually know that REM sleep is really, really important because if you don't get any REM sleep, like if you're awoken during your REM sleep, you literally fall right back into REM. That's why a lot of times you wake up from a dream and you go right back into the dream because you need REM. It's something called REM rebound, where you literally go right back into REM when you fall asleep again if your body doesn't have enough of it. Not getting enough REM sleep actually interferes with your memory. They think that REM is where your memories become consolidated and where you really are able to learn and remember things that happened to you that day. So this is a picture of what the sleep cycle looks like, right? So here's our alpha, right, theta. Then you have delta. This is delta, right? And then this is where you have our active, highly active stage 5 rapid eye movement, right? So this is the sleep cycle, okay? And here's another chart of what the sleep cycle looks like, just a little FYI. So you see that the sleep stages do not go in order. Most times students go, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, wrong, right? Look, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, REM. 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, REM. So it goes down and back up and down and back up. And as you see, at the end of the night, you have more REM and no stage 4, right? They are inversely related. As stage 4 decreases, REM increases, okay? And this is how much you dream based on a lifetime. So infants dream a ton during the day. And of course, that's because they're learning and trying to remember the most about the world. And as you get older, you dream less and less. Okay, so how much sleep do you need? Newborns, 16 to 18 hours a day. By age 1, 13 to 14. You guys need about 9.5 hours, and most of you aren't getting that. And that's because your body clock works differently. For you guys, your melatonin doesn't really turn on until about 11, 11:30, and it doesn't turn off until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. So for a lot of you, you guys are in school for, an hour until your body even wants to be awake as a teenager. Okay? Adults like me, we need about 8 hours. Although I'm a shaper, sometimes I feel like I need 10. But I very rarely get that. I usually get about 6. Why do you need to sleep? If you don't sleep, it'll catch up to you. You'll get really tired. The more tired you are, you can't think correctly. You have worse concentration, right? Ever have a day where you just can't remember where you're doing anything? You might be sleep impaired. You get sick, right? If you are not getting enough sleep, your body's not repairing itself, and you're going to have more depressed immune system. And you have a greater vulnerability to accidents. Driving while being tired is almost the same as driving while being drunk, okay? It's very, very, very dangerous. So what affects your sleep? Stress. We've all had this Sunday night or the night before a test, tossing, turning, you don't sleep at all. Bad news bears, right? Environmental interferences, right? Some of us like to sleep in hot, right? We like to bundle up. Some of us like to keep the window open. We like to be cold. Some of us like to sleep with the TV on or the radio on. Some of us need it completely quiet, right? Some of us don't mind light. Other of us hate light. So all of these different environmental things can totally throw you off in your sleep. Your lifestyle. So a lot of times people think that alcohol actually helps you fall asleep, but it doesn't. Alcohol actually makes you pass out because it increases your GABA, so you become very tired. But it doesn't give you a good night's sleep. It actually hurts your REM sleep, and by hurting your REM sleep, you don't get a very good night's sleep. Okay. Exercising before bed can actually throw off your sleep cycle, and you should never, ever, ever do your homework in bed. And I am a huge offender of this. I always do my work in bed, but it actually makes your bed more stressful, and you have a hard time falling asleep. Other things that can affect your sleep are sleep disorders. So you've probably heard about a lot of these before. Insomnia, right? That's where you either cannot fall asleep or you cannot stay asleep. So you're kind of up on and off all night, or you stay up all night and can't sleep. Narcolepsy, these are people who literally fall directly into REM sleep. So they'll be hanging out, they'll be talking, no big deal. All of a sudden, they're in REM sleep, okay? And it's something that causes it. It's called cataplexy. It's called excitement. So if you're like, you freak out, and they go right into REM sleep, okay? Narcolepsy. Sleep apnea, this kind of sounds like your dad. It's more common in men than women. So maybe your dads have this. It's where you literally stop breathing in your sleep. And one of the telltale symptoms of this is snoring. And it's not like a normal snore, like, it's like this really throaty, awful snore. And sometimes people who have sleep apnea have to wear masks to help with their breathing because they stop breathing so often that they keep waking up and they don't even know they're waking up. Like they don't actually wake up, but their body like jolts back up into stage 1. So they really don't get a good night's sleep. And the last one is REM motor behavior disorder. And this is what happens when your body does not paralyze you during sleep. So you act out, or during REM, so you act out your dreams. Really crazy. All right, that's all for now, AP Psychos. And remember, psychology is flippin' awesome.